So welcome back. We're now looking at solving a quadratic by factorising. If we look at this question here that has been factorised, it's been put back into the brackets, we need to make this equal 0. So this is the same as saying A multiplied by B equals 0. So to make this whole thing equal 0, we need to make A equal to 0 and then B equal to 0. Because if we have 0 multiplied by B, we get 0. And if we have A multiplied by 0, we get 0. So our aim is to make this side of the bracket equal 0 and then to make this side of the bracket equal 0. Let's have a look. Let's start with the A section. So we have 2x minus 6 equals 0. So we can ignore the B section because we know if we're making this bracket equal 0, the answer is 0. So 2x minus 6 equals 0. We're going to solve this by adding 6 to both sides. So we're left with 2x equals 6. We're now going to take this one step further by dividing both sides by 2. We've now got x equals 3. So that is one of our solutions. Looking at the other side, we are looking at 3x plus 12 equals 0. We're subtracting 12 from both sides. We now get 3x is equal to minus 12. We then divide both sides by 3 and we get x is equal to minus divided by a positive is a minus. 12 divided by 3 is just 4, and that's our other solution. So we can say x equals 3 or x equals minus 4. And that is the answer to this factorised quadratic. So now remember we're doing A multiplied by B equals 0 for each of these. So we're just going to write out x plus 5 equals 0, minus 5 on both sides, x equals minus 5. That is a solution. Now we're making x minus 7 equals 0. We add 7 to both sides to get rid of that 7. X equals 7, that is our other solution. So x equals minus 5 or x equals 7. Looking at this second one here, exactly the same approach. A multiplied by B equals 0. So we'll look at A first. 3x minus 2 equals 0. Add 2 to both sides. 3x equals 2. Divide both sides by 3. X equals 2 over 3. Now we're going to deal with the second side. 5x minus 1 equals 0. Add 1 to both sides. 5x equals 1. Divide both by 5. X equals 1 over 5. So x is 2/3 or x is 1/5. This looks different, but the principle's the same. We have now got A outside the bracket and B inside the bracket, and that still equals 0. So in this case we have 2y equals 0, divide both by 2, therefore y is equal to 0. Doing the second part, y plus 6 equals 0, minus 6 from both sides, y equals minus 6. That's our other solution, so y equals 0 or y equals minus 6. Right, so now we've looked at solving these from the factorised position. Let's do the whole thing. Okay, so now we're looking at solving a quadratic that's not in brackets, so we need to factorise first. In fact, if we look at these two equations, we can see that that equals 0 and that one equals 15. I'm going to give you some steps. So your first step will be to make the equation equal to 0. After that, your second step is simple. It is just factorise. And the third step is just to solve for A and B. And when I say A and B, I am talking about that bracket multiplied by that bracket. So let's go through the first question. Make the equation equal 0. That's already done. Second part is to factorise. Okay, so if you recall, to factorise, we have to find the factors of 18, but when we add them, give you minus 9. If you remember, we're looking at ax squared plus the bx plus the c, and we're saying factors of c that add to get you b. So factors of 18 are 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Don't need to go any further. I can see that 3 adds 6 is 9. Now be careful of the signs. So if this is positive, they're all positive or they are all negative. But because this one is negative, these have all got to be negative. So minus 3 add minus 6 is indeed minus 9. So the one we want is the bottom one. That means we open a bracket. We have x in the start of each bracket. So in the brackets, we have minus 3 and we have minus 6. Don't forget, all of that still equals 0. And now we do step 3. We solve for a and b. So we know that x minus 3 equals 0. So we know that we're going to add 3 to both sides. So x in that case equals 3. Let's do the other one here. X minus 6 equals 0. So we know we're adding 6 to both sides, so therefore x equals 6. So in this case, x is either 3 or x is 6. Okay, looking at this one, before I start, I have to make this equal 0. So we have x squared plus 2x minus 15 equals 0. Like before, we find the factors of c that when we add give us b. So factors of 15, well, 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. This is a negative, which means one of these is negative. We want a positive 2x. So therefore that would be a positive 5 and a negative 3. So we have x minus 3x plus 5 equals 0. And now we do step 3, we solve for a and b. So here we go, there's the first one, x minus 3 equals 0. Add 3 to both sides, x equals 3. X add 5 equals 0. We minus 5 from both sides, x equals minus 5. So x is either 3 or x is minus 5. Let's do a few more questions to make sure we've got this. Okay, so we've got a couple of different situations here. The first one, we do the step 1, we make it equal 0. Notice we've taken 9y from both sides. Now we factorise this. Well, 3y comes out of the bracket. And now that is a. This is really important. We see this. That outside the bracket is a, and inside the bracket is b. So we just continue. We have now got 3y equals 0. Divide both by 3. Y is equal to 0. There's our first unknown. Let's do the second part. Y minus 3 equals 0. Well, add 3 to both sides, so y is equal to 3. So in this case, y is equal to 0 or y is equal to 3. Question 2, in this case, a comes out of the bracket. A times a is a squared minus 6 equals 0. Very much the same as the previous one. In that case, a has to be equal to 0. And the second part is a minus 6 equals 0. Add 6 to both sides, so a is equal to 6. So therefore, a equals 0 or a equals 6. Last one on this page. So here we go, factorising this. Factors of 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Both positive, so it's 2 and 3 in this case because 2 add 3 is 5. So we have a plus 2, a plus 3 inside the brackets. And if we solve this bracket first, a plus 2 must equal 0. Minus 2 from both sides, so therefore we can say a equals minus 2. Now if we solve this side, a plus 3 equals 0, minus 3 from both sides, we can say a equals minus 3. So in this case, a is either minus 2 or a is minus 3. Let's look at a few more questions and then we're done. Okay, these look very challenging, but the principle's the same. That's already equal to 0, so we don't do anything there. Next bit is to factorise this. We need to recognise that that is a square number. That is 5 squared. That is a square number. That is 4 squared. So if you remember, that is the difference of 2 squares. So you should recognise we have 5y plus 4 multiplied by 5y minus 4, which equals 0. So now we solve each of these. 5y plus 4 equals 0. We minus 4 from both sides. We have 5y equals minus 4. We divide both sides by 5. We have y equals minus 4 over 5. Looking at this next side, we have 5y minus 4 equals 0. We add 4 to both sides. So we have 5y equals 4. Divide both by 5. So we have y equals 4 over 5. So in this case, y is minus 4 over 5 or y is positive 4 over 5. Now this is where we really need to know factorising quadratics with a coefficient greater than 1. If you remember, we had ax squared plus bx plus c, in this case is going to equal 0. What we need to do is find ac first of all. So you're taking the a and you're multiplying it by the c to give you ac. Well, that is minus 60. We then find the factors of AC, that is AC, which add to give you B. In our case, that's minus 7. I'm going to ignore the sign. I will start with 6 and 10. That's got a difference of 4, not far off minus 7. I will do 5 and 12. So I want a minus 7, so there has to be minus 12 plus 5, because 5 take 12 is minus 7. So those are the factors that I want. In this case, we replace the minus 7x with plus 5x and minus 12x. Now, what I need to recognise is that 6 and 12 are both multiples of 6. So I will start with 6x squared minus 12x plus 5x minus 10 equals 0. Now I factorise by grouping. So I bring those ones down and then I factorise those ones. 6x times x is 6x squared, and 6x times minus 2 is minus 12x. Now the aim for this factorisation is to have the same bracket, x minus 2. So we have 5 outside the bracket. 5 times x is 5x, that's a positive because a positive times a positive makes a positive, and then plus 5 times minus 2 makes minus 10. Don't forget that equals 0. So we finish off the grouping by having x minus 2 all multiplied by 6x plus 5 equals 0. And now we're at the part where we've got a times b equals 0. So we find the solution for that, and we find the solution for that. X minus 2 equals 0. Add 2 to both sides. X equals 2. There's one solution. 6x plus 5 equals 0. So we're going to take 5 from both sides. We have 6x equals minus 5. We divide both sides by 6. We have x is equal to minus 5 over 6. So in this case, x is 2 or x is minus 5 over 6. Okay, let's look at this last question. Again, very much like this one here. We're at the top end of our game now, where we are factorising quadratics with a coefficient greater than 1. First thing we do is make sure that's 0. It is. So now we go and find AC. 20 times 15 is 300, and a positive times a negative is a negative. Remember, we're trying to find the factors of AC that when we add them together we get B. I'm going to start with 10 times 30. I'm ignoring the sign at the moment. That's got a difference of 20, so I'm a little bit off. So now I'll look at 20 multiplied by 15. Well, that has a difference of 5. So I want a negative 5. So that will be a negative 20 and a positive 15. So I will use those ones to replace the minus 5a. So here goes. We have 20a squared. Now in this case, it doesn't really matter whether I have the 20 here or the 15 here because they're all multiples of 5. But I will stick with the 20s together. Minus 20a plus 15a minus 15 equals 0. Again, we're going to factorise these pairs. So 28 comes out the bracket and we have a minus 1 inside the bracket. We want a minus 1 inside the bracket. So 15 comes out the bracket. It's a positive and that is equal to 0. Let's finish off by grouping these two here. A minus 1 multiplied by 20a plus 15 equals 0. Our last little bit is just to solve for this bracket and to solve for this bracket. So we have a minus 1 equals 0. Add 1 to both sides. We can see that a is equal to 1. Dealing with the other side, we take 15 from both sides. So we've got minus 15 now. We divide both sides by 20. So we have a is equal to minus 15 over 20. We need to simplify that. 5 goes into both of those. So we have a is equal to minus 3 over 4. So in this case, a is either 1 or a is minus 3/4. And that's solving quadratics by factorising. Right, so what does it mean by finding 2, 1 or no solutions to a quadratic? Okay, so let's go back a step. So our quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c. And we are saying in our case that y is equal to that. Then we're saying ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. What we're doing here is we're actually finding the values of x when y is equal to 0. So if we take this first example and we factorise this, so we have the factors of 18 that add to give you 3. So I know that 3 times 6 is 18 and a minus 6 plus 3 is minus 3. So here's the factorised version. And then if we solved that, in other words, we make that side of the bracket equals 0, we know the value of x would become minus 3. And if we solved this, made that equal 0, this value of x would become 6. So in this case, we have 2 solutions. So it crosses the x-axis at 2 points. 2 solutions. Let's look at this one. Factorising this, 4 times 4 is 16 and 4 plus 4 is 8. So again, x plus 4 equals 0. So if we're going to solve this, we make this bracket equal 0 first. Well, that means x will equal minus 4. And I make this bracket equal 0. Well, that's also x equals minus 4. In other words, we cross the x-axis once, and that is at that point there, and that is at minus 4. So this one, unfortunately, we can't factorise. So we would have to solve this differently. So in this case, we would solve it graphically, or we could use the formula. Solving it graphically, if we've drawn it out like we have here, we can see that it does not reach y equals 0. In other words, it does not reach the x-axis. And if it does not intercept the x-axis, we can say that has no solutions. So 2 solutions is where it crosses the x-axis twice. 1 solution is where it crosses the x-axis once. And no solution is where the graph does not cross the x-axis. Right, so that's the end of that video. Please like and subscribe. I hope you found that useful. There's a lot of algebra in there, but if you can factorise a quadratic, especially those with a coefficient greater than 1, you should be able to manage this. Great effort if you've got here. So the next video is on solving simultaneous equations.